of the things that I want to talk about to you, Zach, is as of right now, do you see LSU as the best team in the SEC? And that's a serious question.
I think they might be. They're probably not going to open preseason AP as the highest ranked SEC team, and that's fine. I'm not going to pretend to say that I know like Georgia's roster up and down or Texas's roster up and down right now, but LSU's got to. I'd put them up against anybody at this moment, and I think the schedule's pretty favorable. It's sometimes it's as simple as it's not. It comes down to who you play and when you play them. You get the South Carolina game back at home. Now you have to go to Alabama. You have to go to Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma was kind of a mess last year, but Oklahoma, you're expecting to bounce back. And Oklahoma in late November, that's not going to be fun. You got to go to Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is kind of I'm actually glad we're talking about Ole Miss right now because the thing I do worry about with LSU's kind of gone all in for 2025, and that's great. I love that they're going for it. Ohio State went all in last year and ended up in a trophy, but you know what? Ole Miss went all in last year and it ended up with them playing in Jacksonville. So it does kind of seem like.
Well, actually, they played in Charlotte. They played at the Mayo Bowl, I think, if I remember correctly.
Well, either way, they didn't end up where they wanted to. And I guess that maybe if you want to be like, I don't know if skeptical or cynical is the right word, but if you're going to go all in, you better make sure you're at least playing in that 12-team playoff because I bet there's a whole bunch of people in Ole Miss who are still kind of like, man, we blew it. And yeah, I'm kind of talking myself into it. This is great. LSU's the best team in the SEC. I just talked myself into it.
Yeah. And I also want to correct myself. They did play in Charlotte, but to me, Charlotte and Jacksonville are the same thing. Like, if you're not in the Year 6 Bowl, to me, all the bowl games are basically the same. But, Zach, I mean, if you go down – well, Ole Miss – I'm glad you brought up that example, right? Because we saw Ole Miss, what happened with them. Yeah, they went all out. It didn't work out, and now they barely returned anybody from last season. We've already seen the disaster that unfolded in Florida State where they completely invested in the transfer portal. But then when all those guys left, right, Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, all those guys left, they became a crapshoot. And then on top of that, you look at Ohio State. And Ohio State's
got some questions.
That's the story. But if you look at the difference between Ohio State, I think LSU wants to do what Ohio State did, right? Because people think, Ohio State brought their whole team. Yeah, they had a really good transfer class, but most of the star players were guys that already came back, right? Like Travion Henderson was already there. Jack Sawyer was already there. A lot of those guys, so a lot of their stars were still there, right? And I think that's what LSU wants to do, right? Recruit, develop your own, and if you have any holes, fill in those holes using the transfer portal, and that's exactly what they did. And you needed as much talent as possible because if you don't have the talent, you're not going to win the games you need to win to go to the college football playoff, let alone win the SEC or win the national championship. So I think I think LSU tried to build off of what Ohio State did, which is a great model. And really, LSU did need to go into the transfer portal because, not only to get more talent and depth, but if you win a lot, that the future's a lot more brighter if you don't invest in it. You already saw what happened with Clemson. Clemson, for the first time in a while, started to invest into the transfer portal. Dabble was really bullish on using the transfer portal. And then once it started getting a little heat, he started using the transfer portal. And it looks like, I think right now, Clemson is a playoff team. Yeah. Cade Klubnik had a great year last year. And they have a lot of guys coming back, same like LSU. So you need, if you're LSU, you need to go in the transfer portal because if you have a very successful year, that bodes well for the future. You need to win because when LSU started losing last year, that's when you started to see the trickle down effect of guys starting to decommit. Like, Should I be here? Are they a playoff team, or they're kind of like fence sitting? Because last year, LSU has been stagnant the last few years. First year, you go to the SEC championship. Could that, of course, that helps when you have divisions, right? But in the modern college football landscape, you don't have divisions anymore. So, in LSU stayed stagnant. They went 10-4 the first year, 10-3 last season, which was a disappointment because your defense, they couldn't tackle anybody. They couldn't even tackle my 85-year-old grandfather if they had the chance. And my 85-year-old grandfather is using a walker. That's how bad that defense was in 2023. And then 2024, of course, that was a disappointment on all fronts. Now, Gary Nussmeier did have a great year, and there were some bright spots in that season last year. But you could tell that team was missing what it needs to win championship, which is a speed and physicality on the defensive side, especially at this safety spot. The linebackers are fine, and the cornerbacks were improving, but the safeties, that's a common theme in the show, the safeties really lacked what you need to have if you want to win games. So let me go to the comment section real quick. Akeem Baptiste, no excuse to at least make the playoffs and possibly host a playoff game. Well, the only way you host a playoff game is if you don't get a first-round bye. But if you don't get a first-round bye, LSU has a great shot of hosting. It's year 4 in BK. He's got to make some hay now, or the temperature on that seat starts to warm up. Yes, and I'm going to say this right now because I think people, when the season starts and sky falls down, I'm going to say this right now. Brian Kelly's not getting fired during the season or after the season. His contract's too expensive. But that's why he's going all out right now, because he can't afford to have another 9-3 season. Because the 9-3 season, yes, you can still make the playoff, but you kind of have to rely on fate. If you're 9-3, if you're 10-2, you have a great chance of getting in because you finish the season 10-2 in the SEC, right? If you have a 10-2 season as SEC, it's almost guaranteed that you're in. It's very, very unlikely that you're not. I'm not saying there's still a chance where LSU can't get in, but if you're a 10-2 SEC team, it's very, very, very unlikely you don't get in.
Yeah, and to your point about Brian Kelly and Dabo are kind of two sides of the same coin. You mentioned how Dabo's opened up a little more bullish, or was bullish about the portal, and his tune has kind of changed. Well, on or around this time a year ago, Brian Kelly famously said, "We're not in the market of buying players." And look what you got now. The number 1 portal class, 18 portal additions. And I'm willing to bet that all 18 of those guys that LSU's added to the portal didn't come here because they just love the purple and gold, But it's also the way college football is played now. So I'm glad LSU's playing the game, and these are the rules that we're playing by. So do it.
Yeah, I also want to add context to that statement. When Brian Kelly said that statement, you also have to think about this, is that the first year, Brian Kelly had to go in the transfer portal because he needed to, right? There's 39 scholarship players. In year 2, they, instead of developing their players, they entered the transfer portal. They started going to the transfer portal and getting guys, and that was a massive failure. Remember, that was the year they got Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris. And Deuce Chestnut looked like he could be an All-American cornerback during the fall camp, but then when the games were played, he was not a very good player. So you saw that. It's like, okay, we have to develop. We got to focus more on developing our players and not worry about the transfer portal so much. And that backfired to some extent. I'm not sure if it was the direct cause of LSU going in finishes regular season 8-4. But you can make it. But because you didn't go in the transfer portal, you didn't have the right talent needed to make a playoff push. And that team was a 9-3 type team, but had a 10-2 schedule. That was a very, very favorable schedule. Actually, you can make a case that last season's schedule was more favorable than this year's schedule because you had Alabama coming to Baton Rouge. You had Ole Miss coming to Baton Rouge. You had Oklahoma coming to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And also the opening game of the season was against USC. Yes, I know USC was a top 25 team going into the game. But when they finished the season, they were 7-5. They had a worse record than LSU did. And you failed. But now, when you have a better roster, you have better players on the defensive side. I know the offense, right now they're still trying to figure out the offensive line. But if you look at the offense, I mean, Kaden Durham is going to be RB1. And I think Carlin Berry might make a case that he could be RB2. He had a great spring game. The receivers have depth, and you also now have deep threats. Chris Hill, God forbid, if he can stay healthy, that's a deep threat. Kyle Parker, who also I think was a very underrated not departure. What's the word I'm looking for? Lost because when he tore his ACL, that you lost another guy who was more of a deep threat. Kyle Parker was a deep threat, and he was a great route runner. You missed that. Like as great as Aaron Anderson and Kyron Lacy were, I mean they're not deep threats, and you need a guy who could be a deep threat. Kyron Lacy was kind of on and off. Aaron Anderson is more of a slot guy, although he could be a 1,000-yard receiver, which he was last season. That's not somebody you want to be your wide receiver one because he's 5'8", 180. You have to have another guy who can extend the field, and then that's what you need. And then you got all those guys. You got Nick Anderson, and you have. And I'll say this: Nick Anderson did suffer torn ACL. So again, as it sounds, we won't know till fall camp and even the season how healthy, if we could get that speed. But Barry Brown, we already know that is a speedster. Your receiving core is really deep, and of course, you're bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, who had the best rookie season of any quarterback when you can make your kids in LSU history. Even Jay Daniels and Joe Burrow didn't have those type of seasons.
Yeah, and we've seen from Daniels and Burrow, and really, I mean, pick a quarterback anywhere. That second-year leap is a real thing. And I mean, I know the counting stats aren't everything, but Nussmeier, either did he finish at 4,000 or did he flirt with 4,000? I mean, if he did all that in year one, get him more comfortable, get him, as you said, some deep threats, and a 4,000, 4,500 yard season seems really plausible. And it helps to have. Here's a hot take, Grant. I think it's good to bring back arguably the best quarterback in the country. I think that helps a team's. That probably helps.
Yeah. I don't even think it's a hot take. I mean, in terms of yardage in his production last season, who else has that type of production outside of maybe you could say Kay Clubman, right? I mean, there's very few guys that had Garrett Nussmeier's production last season. I know a lot of people are saying Arch. I want to say this again. Arch hasn't played a game yet. It's hard for me to put him in a top 5, top 10 discussion when he hasn't played yet. When the games are played, then we'll start putting him because he should be a top 5, top 10 quarterback. Just given that's how that works in the Manning family, right? But as of right now, let's go down the list of SEC teams. I know just going back to my original question: is LSU the best in the SEC? Georgia is their starting quarterback returning.
No.
It's like, and Gunnar Stockton, yes, he did start a couple of games for Georgia last year. Well, he played the end of the SEC championship game and he started the Sugar Bowl for Georgia. But once again, he's not the returning starting quarterback. He only played a handful of games. Ole Miss.
Nope.
Texas.
Nope.
Oh, well, Oklahoma, they're not returning their starting quarterback, but they're bringing John Mateer, who's a really good quarterback. But again, Oklahoma not returning their starting quarterback. Alabama.
Nope.
Auburn. We don't play them, but they're not returning.
No.
I mean,
right?
What?
Is it Jackson Arnold? Didn't they get him?
He transferred.
I thought they got whatever.
No, they got John Mateer. They got John Mateer from Washington State. He's a really good quarterback, but not returning their starting quarterback. Besides Florida, Texas A&M,
and Carolina.
Nobody else is returning their starting quarterback. Tennessee has a new quarterback this year.
Arkansas
has returned Arkansas returning Taylor Green, but but in terms of the production, in terms of all the quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference, nobody else has the production that Garrett Nussmeier has, and let alone nobody's had the amount of starters are coming back to LSU next year, and also the guys that brought in the transfer portal. Nobody in the SEC really has that. I know games have to be played, but as of right now, if you look at the roster from top to bottom, LSU is a much better team last year, and they're also a much hungrier team this year because this is a team that hasn't lived up to its expectations the last 2 years. And for you to spend all this money in the transfer portal, you're not playing. We're not playing around season for LSU. And look, and I know, and right now we're just talking about it. It's just on paper. But if LSU wants to prove that they're the best team in the country, let alone the SEC, you have to go to Clemson and you have to win a game.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Because that game will determine how this season goes.
Yep.
That Clemson game will be a lot like the 2019 LSU Texas game.
Yep.
And in the sense of when LSU won that game, we all know what happened. We don't have to explain it. Everyone that's watching this right now knows what happened in 2019. And matter of fact, we probably over talk about it a lot, right? I mean, and everyone else has to hear about it. But look how that 2019 Texas team finished. That 2019 Texas team, who was a top 10 team going into the year, was a team a lot of people thought they could go to the playoffs and was a national title contender. A team that literally beat Georgia upset Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. A team that went to the Big 12 championship the year before. Everyone thought they were going to be the Big 12 champions, and everyone thought that they were going to make a playoff and prove that Texas was back. And it never happened. I mean, they lost games that they shouldn't have lost, and nearly a year and a half later, Tom Herman gets fired. Right? It really wasn't until 2023 where Texas, I'll say last year, that Texas back, because they did it 2 years in a row where they made it to the college football playoff. Now they're a bona fide elite program once again. But that's what happened to Texas. Texas became a 7-5 program. That just shows you how important it is to win those big games at the beginning of the year.